Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Immigrant Success Canada's podcast, your coaching program for a successful and happy life in Canada. My name is Emmanuel, and I got my co host and partner Charlie, and we have a very special guest today, Brad Moore.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlie.
Before we'll get to know Brad a little bit more and what he does, I'm just going to take a moment to talk about our coaching program, Immigrant Success Canada, and our website, www.isc-go.com, where you'll find all the information regarding the program and also links to our social channels and also the transcript of this podcast and many, many other interesting shows that we did and will be doing for our audience. Now, Charlie, would you like to lead this
Thank you,
session today?
Emmanuel. I'm really excited and happy today. We have a special guest, and Brady is one of my best friends. We have developed our relationship for the last about 7 years, and he and I worked for a special project together. So I really enjoyed those experiences. But unfortunately, because of his job, he moved to Calgary now. So we are in long distance. But I'm really happy now to be connected again with this special podcast. So today we'll talk about his experience about he, as an employee and then also as an entrepreneur. He has both, he knows both worlds very well. So I think this is a great opportunity for our clients uh, because a lot of immigrants have to choose which field they continue their career when come to Canada or change career and into the other part. So one of the biggest decision is working for a company or organization or starting your own business. So first, yeah, I'd like to ask Brad about his overall view because he has a lot of experience. So between two words, what is his view, and then what kind of recommendations he can give us?
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Emmanuel. So nice to see you. And podcasting live from Calgary, tucked on the edge of the beautiful Rocky Mountains.
Yes.
The the question is the big question is one better? Is it better to work for a big organization? So the organization that I work for now, it's part of a Fortune 500 company, and I run business development across Canada. It's an insurance company, so we insure like the Olympic team, for instance, and a lot of businesses in Canada. So it's a very different feel working for a large organization than it is for working for a small organization such as your own in an entrepreneur environment. And I started several companies and have been nominated for Canadian Entrepreneur of the Year twice. So I've got a good background on both sides. What is better? Really, there's a couple of factors for particularly from an immigrant perspective. I think the most important factor is the feeling. Is when you wake up in the morning, what do you what do you feel about what you're about to do? If you feel excited about it, then it really doesn't matter which world you're in because the ability to be good at what you're doing is really down to the emotional connection you have with the work you're doing. Add to that the risk factor. And I'm in insurance now, which is very risk averse, and entrepreneurship is very risky. So it's a curious thing.
You're very interesting.
Yes. So if you're, it is definitely less risky from a cash flow perspective to work for a big company than it is to work for yourself, to start a new business. However, if your cash needs are minimal, in other words, if you don't need to live a big life initially, if you don't mind struggling, then the rewards of working for yourself and the rewards of building and starting something can be tremendously immense. So it's, the most important thing at the beginning, if you're moving to Canada, is the very beginning part, is what am I doing right away? If cash flow is very important to you right away, then it is a good strategy to choose a bigger company. If cash flow isn't as important to you right away, or if you don't mind struggling a little bit financially, then entrepreneurship has tremendous rewards. It has a sort of a bigger upside than working for somebody, but it has a very big downside in that you can lose everything.
I totally agree with you because when I heard your story and advice, actually, you and I are in a totally opposite direction. So you started as an successful entrepreneur and then did that, and then now working for a big organization. And for me now, I have been working for big organization, bank, government for the last 30 years. And then, as a brother said, I'm now getting more comfortable with my cash flow. So I like to transition into more rewarding and which I enjoy. That's why I started this Immigrant Success Canada, because that's more rewarding to me. For the last 30 years, I have experienced and then that. And that's first one. And second one, Brad mentioned, you mentioned about when you wake up in the morning, do you want to go to work? And I'm excited and I will go to work, right? That kind of feeling. I think that's very important when we choose our career. I think that's your comment is exactly what Steve Jobs talked in his commencement speech at Stanford. And he told to the audience, when you wake up every morning and you do not want to go to work for a week in a row, and then you are in the wrong place. You have to change your career. I think that's exactly what Brad told us. So when you feel happy about your job, you want to go to work, right? That's exactly. Um, Brad, do you have any other comment about this topic?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Is you know, employers in Canada, the boss, the person who hires you, is risk averse as well. So their ability to evaluate you as you're doing your job and when they're hiring you is really based upon the enthusiasm that you hold for the position you're in. I have a saying, nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. So this sense of enthusiasm is extremely important. The practical side, though, of you can be, I want to, oh, I want to own my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur. It sounds romantic. The the reality of the startup is that you have to be good at everything. And even though the idea of owning your own business and building something from the ground up, it can collapse if you're, say, I'm really good at selling, but I'm not very good at books, at financial. Or, yes, I'm really good at financial, but I'm not really good at selling. And you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to understand what it is that the people, your clients, why are they buying from you as opposed to buying from someone else? It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a service, if it's a software product, if it's a manufactured good, if you're importing something from Korea, if you have connections around the world and you're bringing stuff in, you have to recognize in Canada the market that you're selling into, and then you have to be good at logistics of creating, whether it's a service or a product or importing. You have to be good at your money, your cash flow. You have to be good at your presence. You just can't stick a shingle up anymore, or put a web page on. You have to be good at a lot of things to be an entrepreneur, and you just have to recognize that. And if there's things you're not good at, then you have to find a partner who is good at it. So I'm not particularly in love with accountants. Being an accountant
I'm an accountant.
clearly is an accountant. So together we'd make a good business team. And this is very important. If you have to recognize those things that you're good at and you're not good at, and then you have to find them. And if you work for a big company, you don't have to worry about any of that. You just generally you have a job to do. And the job it's usually quite limited within the scope of how the big company works, but it's very important to the health of the company. So within the area that you're being hired, understand where the company makes value from you. So if you understand where the company makes value from you, and if it's a government, where does the government make value from you? What can you do that makes the person you report to look better? And then the company as a whole look better, and focus in on that. And then if within that realm you can find enthusiasm and motivation, then you'll be fine wherever you choose to go.
That's fantastic. And so, if you do not have additional advice, I'd like to move on the next topic, which is about work and life balance. So nowadays, especially for young people, young immigrants, they really value about work and life balance. And it's somewhat a bit different from our generation and now younger generations. So when I worked in South Korea about 30 years ago, and now in Canada, and we are more connected because of internet and globalization. So in your view, what does work and life balance mean? And I know that you have three great boys you raised through your life. So, and also you talked about your parents. They are still living a long life and happily. So, how do you make good balance between work and life?
A good question. First, I think it's easier in Canada to make a good work-life balance. I think there's a culture of you work and you also have family and you play. And that culture is ingrained in Canada. When you tell me stories about when you were younger in Korea, how much you worked, and and when I would travel to Korea and I'd have meet people there for work, they would just worked way harder than Canadians in general, more hours, more commitment to the working component of life. So first of all, the big thing is I think there's just more natural work-life balance in Canada. What is work-life balance than choosing a job? I can say that now that I've spent 7 years working in large organizations, as opposed to small entrepreneurial organizations. So before 7 years ago, the biggest company I ever worked for had 60 people, which was my company. After, and often during the multiple companies, it was one person or two people just starting it up or trying to start it up and discovering, you know what, we can't get it off the ground. It failed. And then try something else. That's entrepreneur. Small companies. Big companies, which 7 years ago was a 1,200 person company, and now it's 20,000 people that we have. And the the bigger the company, the more it seems to be an emphasis on culturally infusing in a work-life balance in the company. So it becomes mandated because larger companies have a hard time keeping good people. They don't want to leave them. So as an employee in a large company, you have a lot of power with just your ability to walk away. That costs the company a lot. When they lose people, they have to retrain people. If you're good and you're motivated and you're enthusiastic, a large company will not want to leave you. You're very secure unless like there's a global situation, and the global situation changes the profit dynamics for the large company, then they can do mass layoffs, and then you're really powerless. But that can happen. That can happen everywhere. Not so much in government, though. Government's uh, but outside of government, if you're in the private sector for a large company, as I've never worked for the government. So uh, there's more emphasis on work-life balance in a large company where, you know, often it's don't work more than 36 hours a week. They don't want you to. The company I work with now, we aren't even allowed to send an email out after work hours to a colleague. And we work in different time zones. So I have to think, okay, I'm sending uh, to Halifax, which is 3 hour time zone difference. And it's 2:30 my time. So it's 5:30 Halifax. So I'll send an email and then I'll postpone the email until so they can't open it until 8 in the morning. This doesn't happen generally in a small company. In a small company, an entrepreneurial company, it's generally the little bit more terrified of going under every moment. And so there's a little bit less work balance in a small company, um, just inherently because the entrepreneur who started it is always a little bit hungry, trying to grow, trying to grapple with a lot of different things. And so generally there's a little bit less concern about a work-life balance, except that the laws of Canada mandate that if you work more than a certain number of hours, the employer has to pay you more. And so the work-life balance really becomes a mandate in terms of if you're working by the hour, an employer generally doesn't want to pay time and a half if they don't have to. So um, it's there's generally less work-life balance in a small company in an entrepreneurial venture. If it's your own, that's totally up to you. But generally, you have to work a lot at the beginning to make sure. A small company is like a baby. If you look away for 15 seconds, the baby could put something in its mouth that and be in real trouble. That's an entrepreneur. Uh, Working for the big company, there's a lot of work-life balance that's just built into the human resources and the culture.
Okay, so that's great. You still talk about a lot about work. So what about your family members, your children, and
Ah,
okay.
me not work. Okay, I have a good life balance. Family is absolutely critical to me. My youngest son Findley yesterday turned 23 years old, and he's in Mexico with his two brothers who are older than him. They're all best friends, and they're in Mexico surfing and scuba diving. So this is, this is very indicative of kind of a work-life balance. And we go skiing as a family together. We live fairly much near each other. We ski whenever we can. I ski with my wife, and we're out hiking in nature as much as possible. At least every weekend, we're out doing something. In the evenings, while the sun is up in the summertime, even right after work, I'll get off at work and I'll go and play a round of golf. So it's the the importance of working hard in work and being motivated is absolutely there. The importance of having a very strong family unit and uh, playing and doing things in the community, and opportunities, volunteering, building up your network, building up those people is also extremely important.
I'm gonna jump right. I'm gonna jump here and complete for those of us who are watching who are not in Canada. It sounds like a dream life, Brad. And in most countries, the reality is in most countries of the world, that's not something that can happen. Canada offers these possibilities. That's why you go through some harsh time at first, but the long term you can have what Brad just mentioned, and why not even better, and for everyone. So even newcomers can have this life that Brad just described. How can you achieve that sooner rather than later? By having a strong plan, a solid 20-year, 25-year plan once you arrive here, and having partners along the way. What might help is also checking out a coaching program such as ours. And I'm going to take this opportunity to bring our website up, www.isc-go.com, where you'll find more information about our program, links to our social channels, links to this episode, the transcript, links to Brad and many other advisors, and I like to call them friends of our program, who will help you have the life that Brad just mentioned before, successful and also happy.
That's great, Emmanuel. So today, the last question for Brad is, in terms of jobs, a lot of immigrants think about location. So I think from my own experience, location is very important. So, but it's a big decision you have to make. So for you, what kind of factors would the immigrants consider when they choose their job and then to make them happy and successful?
Sure. So I would think there's two big factors that come into this. Is One factor is the community of people who originate from your country. The expat sort of community, which is generally, it's easier to find people, uh, Koreans say, communities in cities rather than small towns. So there, if you if it's important that you can find a Korean grocery store or uh, community centers that are focused around like type immigrant groups, then you may be attracted more to a larger place. The The problem is the larger cities, the larger places are a lot more expensive. So housing is expensive, rental is expensive. The other side is smaller towns, smaller cities. In those, there can be real opportunities to keep your costs at a minimum at the expense of you may not have as large a community around you of people who speak your native language, for instance. So that's that would be a consideration that I would have. What would I choose? Then of course then there's the geography. Canada's massive. So the West Coast, Vancouver, compared to where I live, which is in the Western Rockies, there's the prairies, there's Ontario with its massive lakes, there's French speaking Quebec, and then there's the maritime provinces. It's a there's immigration throughout Canada. So you can find like-minded communities everywhere. If you like the mountains and you want to go hiking and skiing, then look for areas where there's mountains. If you if you want salt water and the ocean, you're limited to areas in British Columbia or Nova Scotia or Newfoundland or New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, that type of area. If you wish to be part of the French-speaking portion of Canada, which is Quebec, that where their primary language is French, not English, then geography matters in that way. But really, I think it's between big cities where there's a lot of opportunities, but a lot of expense, or smaller towns where maybe it's not as many opportunities, but you can have a bigger house. You're often closer to recreation, uh, and and so starting out in one or the other, it's this is where talking to you guys, I think, can be really helpful.
Okay, that's great. So that was about the location. So I think when you choose our career and jobs, yeah, that's a great point. That's why for me, I moved to Northern Ontario from Southern Ontario because housing cost is much lower and then every cost was very low. And but when I first come to Canada, I first settled in London, Ontario, which is about top 10 biggest cities in Canada. So I think, yeah, that actually, Brad's advice is actually makes sense to me too. So today, I really happy to talk with Brad, and your advice actually really resonate, and I hope our clients thought like that too. So, Emmanuel, back to you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this just listening to this episode. I felt like I shouldn't interfere because what Brad shared is such great knowledge, not just for newcomers, but overall for business and for life and for a life mindset overall. So thank you, Brad, for sharing that information with us and with our audience. A reminder again that Charlie and I run this coaching program called Immigrant Success Canada, and its main goal is to help you have a successful and happy life in your new country, Canada, for 20 years and beyond 20 years, 120 years. That being said, thank you for watching this.